works, Lord God, to just work in the city, Lord, to network, to do what's best for it. So we just ask for your wisdom to flow to them, discernment, Lord, and it's words of knowledge and understanding. And we lift up the business, Lord, the golf carts, Lord, and the trailer and the vessel hull, Lord, the utility vehicles, and Lord, the things that will be brought up tonight. And we just pray that there would just be a peace and connection of flow. And Lord, we just pray that your love would be threaded through the city. Now, Lord, we just submit it to you and ask you to help us in all the decisions to be made. And we ask it in Jesus' name. And we thank you, Father, in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Lord.
You're welcome, sir.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Scott Tremblay.
Here.
Vice Mayor William Dittmer. Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell.
Here.
Councilman Tom McClary.
Here.
Councilman Tom Kinsella.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager Leonard Tosseman.
Here.
Thank you. I was looking for a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's clear enough, no issues? Okay. We're going to go to comments from the general public. I'm going to start with Dave Mueller. Welcome.
Thank you. Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive, Port Richey, Florida. How's everybody doing?
Doing well, thank you, sir.
Great. I just have a couple of observations and comments. Bathrooms are still an issue. Pasco County is wide open in their schools. This is the beginning of the third week. Doesn't seem to be a problem. I would appreciate it if you guys reconsider your vote and look toward moving forward to open them. I hear a lot of commentary from people in the neighborhood as I walk and talk to them, and people are real concerned about that. Also, I'd like to see where we're at with the candidate for a new city manager. That should have closed by now, and hopefully we can proceed with that. Hopefully we're looking for an update there. Other than that, I had one individual come to me about a notification that his water would be, that he's past due on his water bill and it would be turned off. And he was concerned about the tone of that particular letter. I read the letter. I'm pretty bulletproof. It didn't bother me, but I could see where somebody would have raised an eyebrow or two and got upset with that. My concern is maybe we ought to look to retone the letter on a delinquent bill to maybe it's an oversight, because in most cases it probably is, and maybe not, but it might be something you want to give consideration to. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. The next person I have signed up is Ms. Pat Rogers. Good evening and welcome.
Pat Rogers, 4838 Sunset Boulevard. And I just have a suggestion to help work with our waterfront. And on the south side, every little street that went north and south off of Sunset used to have a little ramp at the end of that street for the people who lived on the streets to use. The two that are accessible now would be Pier and the street where I think it's Ebb-Tide, where the marina and the condo are. The end of both those streets on the water is just a pile of rubble and trees growing in there. And I'd like to see if there wasn't some way that could be opened back up again where the residents who live around there could launch a little boat or kayak or canoe. Because you probably own the property already, you know. So just a suggestion.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. The next person that I had signed up, I wanted to invite Leonard Lord. Pastor Lord, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Honored to be here and to serve. Leonard Lord. I pastored 8114 Leo Kidd Avenue, and I just really want to extend my thanks to the city for helping us as we clean the place up to get the limbs and trash off from the trees. Thank you for that. You did get the flyer about our Care Fest September 26th. If any of you would like to join us for breakfast, there we'll have breakfast about 8:30. We'll have projects and go out in the community. And then 12:30 we'll head back, and hopefully we can join Washington. They're having a big march up there for righteousness and goodness. Also, you should have a flyer in front of you. If you look at it with me, we're very honored. If you look at it, it's going to be Pastor, Leader, and Intercessors Kickoff Celebration. It's a 50-day fight. It's prayer, and they've asked us to host it. Daniel Bernard of Somebody Cares Tampa Bay will be there. And if you've not met Daniel, when the 3 hurricanes came through, it was 700 Club that put $1 million into his hands to restore some mobiles that was down. Also, the movie that he did, The Favorite, he'll be there, and you can see with Trevor Lawton. What Trevor is you can read it, you can see, but he's going to inform us how that we can together as leaders make a difference in our influence. See, Port Richey is not an island on itself. Whatever Pasco County decides affects us. What Tallahassee decides affects us. What Washington decides affects us. So I just encourage y'all to be there if possible for 2 reasons. If you've ever been to one, be there and hear what he's saying as a political activist on what's really happening behind the news that's putting our nation where it's at. And the 2 reasons we would like to personally pray for y'all as the influence around here. And then also you could hear and get insight that goes beyond what you can get on the 6 o'clock news. So I'm thankful to be able to host it at Light of the World and be in the city. And it would just be an honor for all of you that could be there. We just like to make you welcome. People see your faces and particularly pray for you as other leaders join together and pray. There'll be pastors and leaders all around the region there praying with what's coming up in our nation, and hopefully raise some righteous, sober-mindedness back and stop all of the confusion and division going on. So, Lord bless you. If y'all could make it, we'd be honored. You got any questions, give me a call. Appreciate you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you,
Pastor
Council.
Ward.
Lord bless y'all.
At this time, I wanted to move on to comments from our city manager. I wanted to invite Lynn Sossaman to speak at this point.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move over to my right so I can see one of my council members over there. I think I can full view now for all 5. But we are making some progress, I do believe, on we've already put out for the public, what public being Pasco County, as you recall, on the dredge project, which we've discussed and been around for a lot longer than I have. But we sent it over last week. We advised them that we were looking to publish the final version, plans and specifications, if you will, on the 28th day of this month. I believe I indicated that to you at a previous meeting. And then what we would like to do is to open those bids on the 21st day of October. We'll receive bids up until 1 p.m. that day, and then roughly an hour later, we'll be able to open them up for the public and hopefully get bids in that will allow us to make an award, or at least make a recommended award to this board at an upcoming meeting. So that's moving the way it should be. I know the county is reviewing it. I've already heard from their Restore Act coordinator. I've already heard from their compliance officer, as well as an assistant city manager and the engineer who's over those areas for the county. Then on the other big project, going to Nix Park, the boat ramp, and also the water overlay district, I have met with the engineering firm with Ayers Engineering, and they were putting together a proposal for us to bring to this city council at a future meeting to get your blessings, if you will, before we go out. And if you like what they present in terms of that program, then we'll be able to put that out for bids. We're also going to seek some other grant opportunities. FWC has some available, and there's a good possibility, based on their track record, they could help us to put the ball in the end zone, so to speak, since we're in football season. I hope everyone's had a chance to take a look since this coming Thursday in this room at 6:30. We'll be having the first budget workshop for fiscal year 2021. And I sent out a legal opinion that I did receive. I had some commentary and some email exchanges last week with several council members inquiring of it. They apologized because they had some emergency hearings that they had to accomplish before Labor Day. So I got it late last Friday. I wanted our city attorney, Jim, to take a look at it, which he has, and that he's prepared to speak to it. And I was trying to be a little too aggressive, I think, when I said that what we could do is roll it down to zero. There is that possibility, but previous agreements between this city council and the CRA board, and obviously it's the same personage involved, that goes back to one that was adopted in 2008 through the 2009 fiscal year. And what they did at that time, pursuant to the general statutes, was to set a rate of 3.27%, which will allow the city to keep the 96.73. Now that does not affect the county's contribution. That is just city of Port Richey tax dollars, period. The county's contribution would still be forthcoming. We haven't missed a year since. Like I said, that goes back essentially 12 years. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure either Jim or I will give a valiant attempt or endeavor, if you will, to answer any and make it as clear as possible.
Did everyone get the memo on council? Have you seen it? If I can pass you a copy. Yeah, you're welcome.
But with that, I don't know if Jim has anything to add at this time.
I'll address it on number 7.
Okay, good. I just wanted to throw that out there, so hopefully they.
Understood, yeah.
But other than that, if there's anything else the board would like to inquire of, some previous projects that we talked about, I'll be glad to try to talk about those.
All right, I'm good. If that's all you have, Mr. Sossaman, I was going to move on to comments from Mayor, City Council. And I'm going to start off and open with general comments. The first comment that I was going to make is that I received a letter from the Department of Transportation, I believe. I forwarded it to Mr. Sossaman, but in essence it says that there's some grant money that's out there that will fund 50% projects for some projects that we may have within the city. They contacted me to let me know that there was some potential grant money out there. I forwarded that to Mr. Sossaman. And the project that I kind of had in mind was if we're doing that Ritchie Road extension, if we get some help from the Department of Transportation, that may be great. But I did want to forward them that information and let you know that that's what I received in the mail, just so you guys know. If I get anything like that that's addressed to me, I want to make the council aware that I've received that and forward it along to city management. The second item that I had was on the city manager search. I wanted to know by consensus if everyone was okay setting that for an update and just general discussion amongst council for the next council meeting, which is scheduled 2 weeks from, should be 2 weeks from today. If there was any problems setting that as one of the agenda items. Okay.
I have no issue.
Because I really want an update on that, and I want to be able to discuss it with council where we're going, because it that hasn't, the search for city manager hasn't really moved along as well as I would have liked it to have moved along at this point. So I want to address it at the next meeting if we can. So by consensus, that's okay with everybody? Okay. The last issue is an issue that I was hoping that I would have seen on tonight's council meeting that I didn't, and I wanted to readdress it, and it's with the closing of the bathrooms. I've been out and I've talked to a lot of the citizens, and there's been a pretty big outcry in terms of people wanting to use the public restrooms here in the city. And we've been tasked with the balance of public safety versus the convenience for citizens to use the bathrooms. And at the last meeting, there was a vote where there was a motion and a second to open some bathrooms, a couple bathrooms at certain time frames. there were a couple votes that said no bathrooms at all, and then there was one dissenting no to opening some of the bathrooms, and the dissenting no, if I'm not mistaken, was from Vice Mayor saying if we're going to open all of them. And I wanted to know by consensus if anyone had a problem with reopening bathrooms at this point. As the county starts to open, the other cities mostly are open, the courthouse is open, restaurants are open, so the schools or restrooms are all open. So we're getting to a point in time where I thought it needed to be readdressed. It wasn't on the council meeting. If there's a consensus of 5, I was going to ask if we can do that legally. If not, I was going to ask to have it reset on the next agenda meeting 2 weeks from now.
The standard is, that me? If it's not a major item, you can always make a decision on something, but, you know, not that my opinion on what a major item, but it's not a major item, you know, in my opinion. I think you could, is that me with the feedback? Yes, you could do that, and you could do it by consensus. It's part of your emergency powers. That's where he gets his power from you, so.
Okay.
I mean, in my opinion, it's not a major thing.
Okay.
You could do it now if you wanted to.
And we're tasked with doing the right thing, and I generally look back and watch meetings, and I kind of had second thoughts after watching the meeting and talking to the public, and so I was of the opinion that we should start to reopen all our public restrooms at all times, and I wanted to go just down the line and see how everyone else felt.
Well, I stated that before, because all the restaurants are open. You really can't legislate personal hygiene with people, so I think they should all be open personally, especially after hearing the stories about people using behind the bathrooms because the bathrooms were closed. Really puts it forth that I think they need to be open.
Well, I was all or nothing, so if we're going to open them, we'll open them, but when are we going to be able to let the public back in this meeting? I mean, if we're opening bathrooms, can they come in here now?
We'll have to readdress. I think that's a social distancing issue.
That's what this is, social distancing coming up.
So,
Can't let the public back in for social distancing.
No, that's why, if you could fit more, yeah, that's what this is. It's not, nothing more, nothing less.
Well, I'm all or nothing, we either open them or we keep them closed. How are we going to address the cleaning issue?
I think the city's going to have to do the best we can with what we've got. And that's just kind of where I'm at after talking to the public and looking at everything and looking at what the rest of the communities are doing around us and businesses and other government entities. So that's just, my opinion's kind of, I don't know if it's changed, but I think we're getting to a point where we should readdress it and look at it again. And before you make a final decision, I wanted to hear from the other two. I'm kind of curious as to where they're at as well. No. I was going to ask Mr. McCoy.
Well, I'm okay with opening them all. I think we should set a report for either 2 weeks or 4 weeks after we open them from Mr. Uhas to make sure that we're keeping some semblance of cleanliness there, just kind of a check to make sure we're doing things right. If at that point he feels he can't maintain cleanliness in all of them, then maybe we can scale it back, but I'm okay with opening them initially all and then seeing where we are. Or vice versa, opening a couple of them, see where we are, and then open all of them, but you know, either way at that point. But I think we should have a check to make sure that, you know, we're not having issues.
So you're okay opening them all and setting it on next agenda's meeting? Or next meeting's agenda, I'm sorry.
I'm for opening the bathrooms. My only concern is the stipulation is that they have to be cleaned daily, which I believe was the ongoing process. Every day the bathrooms were cleaned. My only concern, because I like to think that we would spend some extra time sanitizing, making sure that they are clean, to open a good half of them or part of them and then have them cleaned and see how that works out, and allowing the workers to continue to get back in that routine. Right now, they haven't been doing anything with those bathrooms. So starting getting them in a routine and gradually move into it, but regardless, we need to get the bathrooms open.
Okay. Are you okay with Mr. McClary's position where we can open them by consensus, put it on for 2 weeks from now, and see where we're at with it?
I'm ready if we could do it now, if we could make the decision now. I have no problem doing it now.
Okay. So by consensus, 2 things: open the bathrooms and also set it for next agenda, next meeting agenda item. Are you okay with that?
Do we have to wait until next? Can we make that decision?
no,
Well,
I'm-
we're opening them now, and then
We're gonna open
in
'em
2
now.
weeks, Mr. Uhas is going to come and say, yes, we're able to keep them clean, or clean them on a daily basis,
I like
or
that
whatever.
idea, yes.
Or if there's
I
a,
agree.
or if
Or if there's a problem, then
then
we'll
we'll
know
address
about it
it.
in 2 weeks.
I'm for it.
Sorry. I didn't-
Okay. So you're okay with that?
I'm okay, I'm for it.
Okay.
All or nothing.
Okay. So you're okay with that?
Okay with it, all or nothing.
Okay, I'm okay with that. So by consensus, can we reopen the bathrooms and then just set it for status on next meeting?
Yes, Mayor, Mr. Uhas and I have been discussing it, and as recent as last Friday, I guess, and feeling that it was going to come back up for discussion. So I think we can follow through and do the cleaning process as was indicated by Mr. Kinsella, which is on a daily basis. And we'll report back to you in 2 weeks as to how things are looking. And I know Mr. Mueller's out and about. Not picking on him, he talks to me fairly routinely about it, and I'm sure if he sees something that's untoward, he'll let us know.
And if there's any emergencies or any issues that come up when there's an email, we can always put it back on for an emergency meeting if we had to.
Right, sir, and I think the local state of emergency that we're on now, that I've been continuing as instructed when the board or initially adopted this every 72 hours. So that probably, unless our learned counsel tells me otherwise, if something happens at one of them, I know you said all or nothing at all, then I think probably Sean and I could make a decision to at least temporarily close it and put that on the report for the next meeting on the 22nd.
And can we hear from?
He has that authority. He always has that authority for emergency.
Yeah,
If it goes crazy, he'll shut it and he'll bring it back.
And we'll just bring it back. Okay. And come on. You got your mic, okay.
I just have one request. Can we set this off for Thursday morning? This way, main reason being is we've been de-webbing and cleaning the bathrooms on a monthly basis. We have not had a chance to clean them now and restock them. If our police department opens up tomorrow, we don't know what's going to be in there, and we don't know if it's been stocked.
Yeah, of course, we can do that. I want to make sure when we open them, everything's right, so.
Yeah,
Thursday
as long as
morning.
it's open by this weekend,
Yeah,
that's
that's
fine.
fine. And I appreciate everyone indulging that issue, even though it wasn't on the agenda. That was all the comments that I had, and I was going to pass it to the rest of the council. I'll start with Mr. Kinsella, if I may.
I want to thank the city for moving that DMMA sign back and posting it on the fence. It really looks nice. It's out of that line of sight for that traffic. A couple citizens last week shared their displeasure. They were upset calling our code enforcement department and not getting anyone, or leaving messages and not getting any response back. And has that been taken care of?
Unfortunately, right now, he's still out and he's ill. We've tried.
That I understand, but wouldn't we have somebody else to handle the complaints that are coming in?
We have when we get those complaints. As a matter of fact, I handled one earlier today that came in. Actually, they didn't call the code office. They called my assistant Valerie, and she gave it to me. And I went ahead and immediately sent an email over to Sean because it was in his area of expertise. We do that on a routine basis. So right now, if people can just either call my office, or if they want to contact our police chief, Chief Robinson's volunteering. So I think there are several of us that can pick up the slack, sir.
I guess it's the communication piece where they didn't understand. They would call, leave a message, and never got a return call. They would continue to call, hoping to speak to someone in code enforcement, and they weren't getting anyone, nor were there calls being returned. So they were a little upset with some of the, I saw one problem that was corrected, so I don't know if it's through code enforcement that was done or it just happened took care of itself at the right time. But again, a few citizens were very upset about the lack of response from the city.
I'll get Sal to remind me tomorrow morning, and between he and I, we can probably work with Valerie, my assistant. She takes care of the website, and we'll see if we can put a message on there to that effect.
That'd be great, thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. McCleary?
Two quick items. One actually tying into the DOT letter that you had received was the Cody Avenue, the one-way, making that a one-way, so we're blocking off the Route 19 exit. I'm sure that's a big safety issue. DOT would probably be more than happy to supply monies for that immediately, or as quick as feasible. So I was asking about that project and tying it in with the DOT grant. The other item having to do with Nix Park, the works over at Nix Park is as part of the original funding for the Restore Act and the dredging was the sidewalk improvements, the lighting improvements for the overall waterfront overlay district. Again, if we can start diving into that a little more in a little more detail and tying in that work with Nix Park work, maybe we can get some benefits of scale on these projects.
If I may, the Mayor, the Councilman's absolutely correct, and that's what I'm working with Ayers Engineering on, is to actually broaden the scope, and he feels like that if we do that, not just the boat ramp, but also the sidewalk, pavers, signage that's lacking in that area, as well as additional lighting, that hopefully we can get all of that accomplished. And that's why he wants to bring back a conceptual and make that presentation at an upcoming board meeting so that you all can decide what you like and what you don't. And hopefully you'll like everything that he puts together. I met with him for probably an hour and a half or two, and I think he's got a good idea of what I've perceived to be this council's ambitions going forward with it.
Okay.
Councilwoman Sorrell?
Do we have any progress on when Avila's going to quit their big trucks and put speed bumps on Old Post Road?
I don't have any right now. I'm not sure if two gentlemen to my far left do, either Dallas or Sean might have an idea, since I know they interact fairly routinely with and we did have a meeting with the Avila Bay folks, about 10 days ago, because they had actually informed us they had, Chief Robinson was there, Captain Koch was there, they had some problems internally with parking on the street, and of course the streets are private, and we let them know that we had an enforcement issue from our perspective, so they indicated they were going to go ahead and proceed with putting up signage. But they did indicate too that they're on the downhill swing, if you will, to get that last of the projects done. They're looking for additional parking spaces. I know it's a tight squeeze in there, so I'm not exactly sure how they're going to work that out. But they've indicated they would work with us, so I hope they will.
And can I, just for point of clarification, if I recall, I don't remember voting on 100% putting speed bumps in versus I think they were going to do a traffic study and come in.
We didn't
Okay.
do that. But what we were trying to do is wait until Avila and the heavy traffic was done, because it would be impractical to put them out at that time with all those big trucks anyway.
And then readdress it.
And then we were going to
Okay.
readdress it afterwards. And
Okay.
then we had to wait for the county or the state to tell us about.
We're trying to get a hold of the county traffic, since they do have traffic engineers. Since everything's locked down, they're not returning calls. I've left several messages on them. And to answer the question roughly, speaking with Megan from Brandywine, who is the property management, they are looking at February or March of next year to be completed. Yes, ma'am, that's with the building, but they are talking about an additional structure that won't cause as much traffic as what's causing out there. Hence, that's why Old Post Road is a little bit beat up, the sidewalks are beat up. Once they're done, we'll correct all of that.
Are we patrolling that area just a little bit more to keep that type of thing down?
Yes, ma'am, we've had additional patrols out that way since our last meeting.
Every little bit helps. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to pass it over to our Vice Mayor.
Again, the FDOT, questions I was going to ask regarding that new funding or the new grant money, but also when you mentioned WOD, the signage, I also realized that maybe that would fall under part of that grant money as well. And we've already allocated $200K to that project, so that could be a nice.
Be 400K.
Right. Be a nice return for us on that. Glenn said he was already addressing the Nix Park road map thing that's ongoing. And the only other one I had was really just make sure we keep on top of the road extension. That's all I have.
On the Ritchie Road extension, since that's been brought up a couple of times tonight, we have, we being a large number of staff had a Zoom meeting about 2 weeks ago with some folks that are looking to at that property, that 20 acres plus or minus that's on the other side of Walmart, and they are aware that they would have to have their ingress and egress onto Ritchie Road after it's completed. We've had that discussion in its entirety. Again, I had representatives there from every city department, including myself, so it went very well. They are going back and evaluating where they are. We didn't tell them we were looking to do it ourselves, but they know that has to be done. I think the question came up, and since Sean's here, and about what type of road, that type of thing, and also the water and the sewer issues. And of course, we're in pretty good shape there, which means that they're in good shape because of the accessibility of it. So we let them know that we hoped that they would and expected some type of participation. Didn't want to lay a real major guilt trip on them, but thought that if we could, hit them with a soft glove rather than a hard one, that would probably help them to move in the right direction. I think their agreement was they understand it.
All right, because also I think that would make a big help for us with the drainage on the Bay Boulevard, that project.
Yes.
To help direct that water back off the Bay Boulevard.
I believe you're correct, yes, sir.
And like I said, that was most of my whole business I added on there, so.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think that's all that we had for comments from the board. I wanted to move on to see if I could get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, I want to move on to council business. It's showing as item 3 on mine. It's the second reading of ordinance 2675 regarding golf carts, and I was going to pass that over to our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the second and final reading of ordinance 20-675 by title only. The golf cart ordinance, as it's been known. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Richey, State of Florida, amending the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 36, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 5, Golf Carts, Section 36-163, Regulation of Golf Cart Operation, and Section 36-165, Golf Cart Registration, providing for severability, inclusion in code, and effective date. This is changing the speed by 5 miles an hour, and it's what gives council the ability to recognize Newport Richey, which we'll do in the next resolution. So I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Thank you. Can I hear any motions?
Motion to approve ordinance 2675 regarding golf.
Any seconds?
Second.
Before we vote, I don't see anyone signed up. I do see members from the public. Anyone want to comment? Seeing no hands. Anyone want to comment? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We can move on to the next item, showing item 4, which is approval of resolution 2003 regarding golf carts. I'm going to pass that over to our city attorney as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the resolution. It'll be read once by title only. This is the resolution where we are changing the registration fee. We are actually recognizing Newport Richie's golf carts here, and also recognizing the previous checklist. Keep in mind, it's just a resolution, so now we can change this rather rapidly in case you want to change the price or whatever. I'll see that the police chief gets a copy of this, and as well, and arrange for this to be in place by the first of the year. This is resolution number 20-03, a resolution of the City of Port Richey revising the registration fee and inspection protocol for golf cart operation on certain streets in the city and providing for reciprocity of golf cart operation on certain streets in the city. Looking for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 20-03 as read.
Before we vote, I wanted to open this for discussion to the public. Comments? Seeing no hands, put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Move on to the next item, which is showing as item 5 in my book for the police department surplus of vessel, hull, and trailer. I was going to pass this over to Mr. Sossaman. We can't hear you.
Oh, I apologize. I said
Now, okay. Hopefully now you can hear me. I'm sorry. I received about a week or so ago from Chief Robinson as well as Captain Koch the item you're referring to, and so we went ahead and were able to get it on the agenda with Sal's help. He's got that boat hull and trailer back there that we need to remove from their yard, and I know it's been discussed that they need a new boat and so forth, so we hope that we'll pick up a few dollars by surplusing and selling this. Chief Robinson has been looking, along with the captain, at locating a boat that they could, or a vessel of some type they could use. So for those purposes, this board has brought up multiple times in the last few months. So what we like to do is recommend, we need a motion and a second, for us to be able to surplus it and sell it. And Chief Robinson and the captain are here both if they would like to have any questions, but it's not serviceable at this point in time. It probably would be not in our best interest to try to make it serviceable.
So we can't use it as a trade-in? Is that what you're saying?
Probably if you had it in an abandoned ship mode, then I would leave that into the hands of Chief Robinson, since he's former Navy.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm going to open it for discussion and any motions amongst council. I've actually been down there and viewed the vessel, and I would think that it would cost, the cost-benefit analysis, it would cost way more to get that boat into shape than it would be worthwhile. And it also just eats up a lot of space out there, and I haven't seen it used since I've lived in the city. So I really like the idea of utilizing whatever we can get for that towards potentially down the road a new police boat. So I like that idea. So that's my thought.
I have one question. One time, somebody came to me and said they were interested in.
How's that? Yep. Somebody expressed interest at one time in purchasing that vessel from us, and I let the previous city manager know. And the only thought is if we send it out for auction, can we set a minimum? Because if his offer is higher, maybe we could get more from them than from the auction.
I've worked in the past where we've set minimums, as you suggest, and unless there's something in the Florida state law that would prohibit that, and I don't know that there is, but I think Jim might want to address it. I'm not sure if we could sell it directly to that individual, though.
I would feel a lot more comfortable if we just give him the address and time of the auction. He can go bid it up. We've had problems in the past, and there'd be no reason to do that. Let him go to the auction. Well, I understand, and then we have to decide how much, how we win the auction. There's not a lot of boat auctions. Where are we going to get it? Stuff like that. So I'd feel a little more comfortable if you move to put this for auction as opposed to ending up locally here. We've been down that road before.
Any other questions, comments, and/or motions?
Motion to approve the vessel and trailer from the police department as surplus property and offered for sale through auction or disposed by other proper means.
Second.
Before we vote, I see there's members of the general public that are here. Mr. Mueller has signed up for this item. I'd like to invite him to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor. Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. I am aware of that boat back there. And it's a sad state of affairs to have an engine flood because somebody didn't pull the plug on the bilge, based upon what I read. That being said, with the chief of police looking for a new boat, that structure of that hull is probably an excellent boat to use to restructure his waterfront force. I would venture to say you could probably add an outboard motor and a bracket on that boat and retrofit that for $25,000 or less. That's just a ballpark estimate. The entire city waterfront is a no-wake zone. We don't need to go fast, but that boat has extra capacity than the little flats boat they got hanging out on the dock. In addition to that, I'd like you to consider that if in the big picture, if that's the case, that might be the route to go. And it solves two problems. $25,000 is probably not a lot of money, probably can be handled out of the penny for Pasco. There's a lot of local businesses around here that sell 4-stroke outboards, and they're very dependable. One item that came to mind was, I know that we've been selling a lot of things through auction. Now with the boat, you can transport that, no problem, but with all the cars that were sold, somebody had to pick them up and move them, and there's a lot of transport costs. So at the end of the day, are we actually making any money on this, or are we actually losing money because of transport costs and fees at an auction? I would like to see some kind of reporting and have some fiscal responsibility to say, okay, we sent 20 vehicles over there, A through Z, whatever, 26, okay, and see what we actually netted for the city as a result of that. It's just a way to keep the checks and balances in play and present the case that you're actually getting your bang for your buck, because I think everybody's interested in that. Appreciate you considering that.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Mr. Mueller was the only one that signed up. Anyone else like to speak? Seeing no hands, we'll open it for discussion before we vote.
Yeah, I have, oh, sorry, can I go or?
Of course.
Has anyone from, I know we have several marinas around here and people who work on boats, has anyone looked at it and see what it would cost to repower that thing, or?
I think you've got Captain Quint who is ready to speak toward that issue, sir.
So we actually looked at making that into a fireboat probably about 3 years ago. We brought the boat over to Sunset Landing Marina to see how much it would be to be able to secure that transom area, secure it. It was roughly around $47,000 just to put motors on it and secure the transom and make it quote unquote somewhat seaworthy. It wasn't saying, it still needed steering cables in it because the steering cables were gone, the power drive cables were gone. So just for the motors, the transom was right at like $47,000, and that was on the state contract pricing for Evinrude.
And for 47 grand, we may be able to get something fairly close to a new boat.
Yeah, that was just for the motors though. There's still more going into that after
Correct.
47, so.
Correct. So I think we're better off going a different direction there. So
Just want to make sure we did our due diligence, that's all.
with that, let's put it to a vote. We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Move on to item 6. Approval of purchase of two F-250 vehicles for the utility department. I'm going to pass that to Mr. Sossaman.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know we've got those two on there, and I think the price was $82,335 run by Ford of Port Richey for the F-250s, as you indicate, two of them. That would include a service contract as well as all the additional equipment that needs to go on there. I think Sean is ready to answer any questions you have, and also our city attorney may have some commentary to make on it, whether you want to make a motion to proceed or for deferment.
Thank you. I did have one question. That we have different restricted funds that we can use to purchase vehicles. Would this come out of Penny for Pasco or Utilities Department?
It could probably come out of either, but I think we're looking at coming out of utilities.
Okay. So that was the only question I have. Looking at our budget and some of our restricted funding, it looks like probably a pretty good purchase for the city, in my opinion. So I was going to pass it around for comment or discussion with the rest of the council.
We had already budgeted these vehicles in. So.
The question I had, I know we're under state contract, but I also know under the state contract, different dealerships give different pricing. Have we, I see there's only one number here for the...
Can I answer that? Yes, I have severe problems with this for those reasons, yes. First of all, this is the City of Port Richey purchase request form. It says what type of purchase, we don't know. One has to be circled, so I doubt if this is a sole source, but I don't know. If it's a piggyback, it lacks the supporting documentation. If it's 3 bids, you can't do that in excess of $25,000. So if this is a piggyback, the contracts for the underlying bid would have to be here. Is this a piggyback? It's not a piggyback, then how are you doing it?
When I went in and did Sourcewell, FSA, and with Port Richey, the same way I bought the Ford F-550 and the other 250. And as we had the problem last time this was presented, it was only Duval Ford. They also presented you roughly about 50 pages of everything that FSA considered. This is actually the Florida State contract through Ford of Port Richey. As Mr. McCleary pointed out last time, Coggins is on that program also. Unfortunately, Coggins will not return any of my emails. I've tried repetitively, so I have Duval Ford, Coggins I've tried to reach out for, and Ford of Port Richey. Ford of Port Richey, the gentleman was telling me that Coggins, the base truck is cheaper. He's charging for all the extra for the bed, the lights, the spray liner, and everything else. As per the contract, you can use.
What word of that? I'm sorry.
They can discount for the OEM parts. So as this was presented to you, hopefully you got all 3 pages of it. This was bought from Marion Ford on a Sourcewell contract. He's selling it to us on a Florida State contract, 251. And then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros -19-1. That's his contract, which is the motor vehicle. I have a copy of it. I'd be more than happy to give it a copy of the sheet to it. He does deal with Newport Richey, and he also does with Emerald Coast and a few other cities. So he's a legitimate dealer. He's doing this all up in Sunshine, and he's not a sole source. He's one of 3 that I've contacted. I did supply, I believe Sal did supply you with the Duval Ford quote for the same thing, which is the F-250, which was more money per unit.
I have a question. Go ahead. Is this considered a piggyback then if it's coming off the state bid list? Because that state bid list went out to other municipalities, right?
Yes, sir. This bid list is set up throughout the entire state. It's done by.
That's what I thought.
To be exact, I will get it to you here. I have a copy of it. It is Department of Management Services for the state of Florida.
All right. So my question to Jim then, is that considered then a piggyback because that contract's already been done with?
I just need to see it.
Oh.
I can't determine that from the paperwork.
Okay.
Well,
it wasn't circled, so I wouldn't know.
Can I make a?
Piggyback, I need to know exactly what a piggyback is from. Generally, you're going to take that piggyback and you're going to have the underlying contract contract. Now, obviously, it's coming from the Florida Sheriff's Association or the other major one, we don't ask for the underlying contract. If it's coming from somewhere else, is represented by a third party, then we want to see it.
Can I make a suggestion? I'd like to move this to next 2 weeks from now agenda so we can get the appropriate supporting documents. Either that or I think it's going to go out to bid. I think he's right.
Yeah, as a practical matter, Mayor, you never go out to bid on vehicles because you won't get enough people to bid on. There's 2 major lists for vehicles here in Florida, and you can take off those bids. But if you go to outside governmental agencies that bid, we can piggyback off of those. But we still need to know exactly who it's from and not take the information from a third party. Do you understand what I mean? Somebody says they all want to sell cars. Do you understand what I mean? And so Ford here can go to their friend down the block somewhere else and say, well, I got it from that bid. But at some point in time, we have to see it. Do you understand what I mean? Not just them on their letterhead saying so. Do you understand what I mean? That's it. This is the hearsay of the hearsay.
And when I said put it out for bid, I was saying basically get 3 quotes from other dealerships that all have the same list.
The 3 quotes is
It would all be the same.
No. The price that we're willing to pay up to is set by a governmental bid.
Which is the list.
Which would be a list, and then
Right.
you go out and buy it at that price or lower. You don't need to get 3 shots at it.
Oh, right.
It has nothing, it has nothing to do with 3. In other words,
But if
once
you
you
don't have-
determine what's on another governmental bid and that's the price, you can get it anywhere.
But if you don't have that documentation, then you would need the different quotes.
Well, I need to know what the quotes
Right.
are. Yeah, I'm trying to figure that
Right.
out from this paperwork,
Okay.
which we can't do. And I'm not saying that Mr. Uhas didn't get it, they're not returning their calls or something like that, but I can't take a document from somebody else that says City of Port Richey, Duval Fleet here, and just a statement. You understand? We're going to need a little more than that, See, what they all do is all these dealerships, and you can buy from the local dealerships, will always tell you, well, that's the best price, they got it over here, and then they get something from over there. Just, do you understand what I mean? There's got to be something showing where it's being bought from.
Okay. Are you guys okay moving this to the next item for paperwork?
Yes.
Okay. By consensus, can we put this on 2 weeks from now?
Yes, Mayor, we can. And what I'll probably do is also check with City Manager Debbie Mans over at Newport Richey, because it's my understanding from her that they have piggybacked off other contracts. So I'll see if they've got something that's comparable that we can piggyback off.
Okay.
Yeah, you can piggyback off them.
We've closed item 6. The last item on council business is the approval of City of Port Richey and Port Richey CRA in a local agreement. And I'm going to pass that over to Mr. Sossaman let me back up. Mr. Mueller signed up for item 6. Because we've tabled it, I'd ask that we allow your comments when we come back, because I don't think we're going to go any further with it today, if that's okay.
It may have relevance in the work that we do to get it back.
So,
Just take a second.
I'm not going to open for public comment. We've passed the item and we're on to the next one. So I wanted to pass item number 7 over to Mr. Sossaman for introduction.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know Ms. Sorrell has got the item that I sent out, which is a legal opinion from the Shepherd Law Firm. The Shepherd Law Firm specializes, they actually are a firm that represents the Florida CRA Association. They also represent a number of individual CRAs in cities throughout Florida, as well as a number of cities in Florida without CRAs. I asked them to review this for us because in our exploration and questions that I've had in discussions with our city attorney, there were some things that we really couldn't answer or that we thought we had answers. So we've researched CRA files, and we found this agreement that was dated October 1, 2008. And at that point in time, the city council entered into an agreement with the CRA board to, instead of doing the 96.73 contribution or appropriation, if you will, from the city's general fund to the restricted CRA funds, it was set at 3.73. This firm feels like that contribution was for that 12-month time frame. So, and I know Jim has prepared another resolution, if you will, that will essentially do the same thing. It will set the contribution rate at 3.73. The amount of the contribution would be $31,664.48, if my memory serves me properly. That's what we'd like to recommend to you. And I knew we had already talked at the last budget meeting about the general fund reserves. All we would have to do in order to bring the budget back to you reflecting that number would be to extract that $31,664 and change from the general fund reserves. That would still leave you a healthier than one you've had, a healthier general fund reserve than you've had in a number of years. It would also not have any adverse impact on your CRA and its reserves, except for the fact that instead of having $900,000, which would have a severe impact on your general fund reserves, it would put that $31,664 into the CRA. And this is just as I indicated a few moments earlier when I kind of jumped the gun on this issue, but I wanted to make sure everybody was aware that it was coming. It has nothing to do with the county's contribution. CRAs, as you know, are set up. This is really a good self-help program because I guess one way to look at it is every tax dollar that the city collects within its confines is going to be spent here. Even the CRA funds that you set into the CRA trust fund that are administered will be spent here in Port Richey, and also those general fund reserves will be spent in the city. However, the county, when they collect funds here from the citizens, they can be spent anywhere in the county because it goes into their general fund. This is just a mechanism, if you will, for a portion of those funds that are collected by the county through their taxing platform that will be returned to this city so that it can use them for CRA purposes, if you will.
Thank you for the introduction. At this time, I'd like to open for discussion and/or motion with the council.
I had a question. Is this something in the future that we can adjust on a regular basis based on our current budget and our finances? I see that make a change. Is that something that can fluctuate so we can adjust it based on our budgetary needs at the time?
I believe so. Okay, let me preface this. Did everybody understand what Mr. Sussman said? This can get a bit confusing. The city, just so everyone understands, the tax TIF funding, tax increment funding, comes from two places. One is the increase over the county taxes, and one is the increase of our own taxes. And apparently, and just so everybody understands what happened here, is when you increase the city's taxes, at least tentatively, to 1.5%. Normally, our share was approximately 40% of the county share when you matched one against the other. That brought it to almost equal, making it $1 million. It just blew the budget apart. At that point in time, Mr. Sussman, myself, and the finance director sat down and looked at this, knowing we just couldn't do that in any way, shape, or form. I then did considerable research, and I'm not a tax lawyer, and Mr. Sussman and I went over and over it with the finance director, and I came to the conclusion, mostly by analyzing what would happen if we didn't turn the money over. Apparently, if there's no bonds pledged against it, it's kind of hard to explain what that is. They can waive it. They being yourselves, you can waive it to yourselves. So from that point in time, after some additional research, I went to Mr. Sussman and said, look, I'd really like a second opinion. So we contacted Cliff Shepard, me, Mr. Sussman, as well as the finance director, and got him on the phone. And this is after I looked for someone that was a lawyer, a tax lawyer, and Mr. Sussman went to the Florida League of Cities, and after great searching, we got, in my opinion, the #1 guy in the state. Pretty much told us no. He goes, Jim, you don't have to mandatorily contribute to it, anything. Okay. So I said, well, we're going to need that in writing. We signed an engagement letter. And then I went and found the old CRA files here in the city. Okay, thank God there's still hard files somewhere, but one from 20 years ago. I went through that for some time, and that's when we came up with, in 2008, I got the original documents, and in the original documents, it doesn't say we're going to actually match it dollar for dollar. It was somewhat generic, but not that it makes any difference. But in 2008, was it? No, when? 2008. In 2008, they got a quote unquote a gentleman by the name of Mr. Cardozo, who was the statewide CRA expert. He's a lawyer. He said you can do it this way. Now there was probably there's a very long explanation to answer your question, Councilman Dittmer. For some reason, they set 3.27% as an amount. It didn't say why, and I have that resolution here. It really pretty much reads like my resolution, a little more detail. It was passed, it was done, it passed auditing, it was just fine. The problem is, the next year, the city didn't do it again. Now, it's hard for me to look at that thinking, well, you've already now changed it. Is that what we should have done going forward? But we didn't. We paid the money in. So now we're doing it again. And I think myself as with Mr. Shepherd is, well, what's the ramification of not doing it ex post facto, after the fact? And so to be on the safe side, he agrees and I agree, we should go back to doing it that number. Might have been some basis for it or some study for it. Then we have a year to decide whether we want to do 0 next year or target it to some number. So that's his opinion, and that's why it's written in the specifics of the amount. Mr. Sussman was, speaking of that issue at the last meeting when he says, well, they just put in $17, he misspoke. It was $17,285.13, okay? What's it tied to? Really nothing, there could have been something then. So what we're doing is, on the one hand, according to Mr. Shepherd, we sent them what you're looking at, and I changed it. He should have just handed it to you. That would be paying nothing, the one that's in the agenda here. The one I just handed you, paragraphs 3 and 4, the numbered paragraphs show you the 3.27. That's the difference between that and 100. So I guess I'm comfortable with the #1 CRA lawyer telling us we don't have to pay it, okay? Can we change it? I'm pretty sure we can. Do you understand me? But I feel real good about the 3.27% rather than take a chance. But I think each year we can address it, and I recommend we should.
On a yearly basis.
Oh, sure.
And then
I'm sorry for that long explanation, but I think it's a serious matter. Yes. And just so everybody understands this, because I'm reading some shade tree lawyers floating around, seems to be a lot of that lately, out there on the social media, that most CRAs do not encompass a whole city. It was kind of unusual that they allowed us, for us and Newport Richey. Usually it's a small area, and so what happens is, and usually in a small area, let's say it's a few businesses in a very bad area of town, and they say, look, let's set up a CRA for them, and we'll put 1 or 2 council members on, and the business leaders. And then they promise in the initial documents that we'll match every dollar that the TIF funding gives you. And that's the deal from the beginning. And then as a matter of fact, coming out of the gate, we're going to borrow it against that money, which you're allowed to do, and bond it. Then you can't change it. Okay, there's all kinds of rules that go on for pages. And then they could also put it in there, and you'll always do that. So this way, the city may obligate to $100,000 a year for 20 years. Okay, and the TIF funding against it and things like that. So that's why some do it. But to do it on a full scale for the whole city, that's usually why it's not done and why the law is the way it is. So, and since we are the CRA, we're not only the city, the only agreement needs to be with us because we are the taxing authority with regard to that aspect of the TIF funding. In my opinion, and I'll probably speak with Mr. Shepherd again over the next 12 months at least once and spend a couple of, I think we should do it each year. And just be careful.
And one other thing, if I may, Mayor, is that I think our Vice Mayor asked about doing it on an annual basis, but you can also look at it between here and the end of the next fiscal year. Because if for some reason you came up with a project, you could, since the general fund reserves are, quote, unrestricted, whereas the CRA funds are restricted, then if you had a project that you says, well, I think we need a little bit more money in there after it's bid, you could always appropriate that additional sum of funds from your general fund reserves if you have a healthy general fund reserve.
That's the goal.
And also, I should say, is as our council did indicate, we've done a lot of research on it. One thing that we found in all the documentation way back in, I guess, '02, when the CRA was first established, is they did talk about the possibility of issuing bonds. And as our attorney has just said, you can do that. However, the estimated monies that would come in for that first year was $100,000. In order to get a 1.5% coverage ratio, which is 150% of what it would take, they could only issue $64,000 in bonds, which they decided was not enough to do anything. So in my opinion, that's probably the basis on why they matched the county's contribution at that 96.73%.
Thank you. My humble opinion on this issue is that we have an older resolution, but it still seems to be valid with putting the percentage in, and I'm comfortable with that, and that's the direction that I'd like to go. That's my personal opinion, and I wanted to pass it down.
My question is, obviously Pasco County contributes a percentage to funding. Does our changing our contribution to the CRA in any way, or can it in any way impact Pasco County's contribution to the CRA? Or are we going to get into a pushing contest over contributions to the CRA and that sort of thing? And do we in any way jeopardize our CRA by not contributing to it?
That's the reason. Is this me doing something here, Sal? Or? Oh, give me. Okay. According to Mr. Shepherd, no. Okay, that's the whole point. And there are two TIF fundings. Okay, one is what our residents pay above a base year on county taxes. That's the unfunded mandate to the county that's coming this way. The other TIF funded is our own city residents paying more than the base year on City of Port Richey taxes. Okay, and we're the taxing entity there. And your question is, well, if we change this, you know, does it affect the county's unfunded mandate to pay? That was the only question we had for Mr. Shepherd. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I said, I wanted to find that answer out because in the code, in the statute, I looked to the portion where it's our funded mandate to ourselves. What if we didn't do it? What could the CRA do to us? Mm-hmm. And the answer is nothing, if they agree. Well, you are both ends of the spectrum, and that's when I finally said, you know, I think this is real, that we should check this out. And according to Mr. Shepherd, his answer to that's no, they can't.
So then, theoretically, the county can't change its contribution without the agreement of the CRA either, correct?
Correct.
According to state law.
According to state law and Mr. Shepherd, that's it. That's why I sought his opinion, because I didn't want to make that $1 million decision by myself. And he's clear as day on it to me. And we did it before. Didn't change anything. We did. I have the.
When we did it last time, did the county have any knowledge or in that you could find in the documentation?
I couldn't find any. I couldn't find any in the documentation because I didn't expect any to exist. Because I don't think it's no legal reason why.
So what kind of resistance will we have from the county if they so choose to object to what we're doing?
Who would send us the money? I would presume they wouldn't send us the money. If you were asking what could they do,
Right.
I would presume they wouldn't send us the money.
And then we would have to, it would be a legal fight then.
It would be, sure. Yeah. It's my opinion, and that's why I got Mr. Shepherd, because I'm not a tax lawyer, because believe me, but I'm simplifying something that's extremely complex. And we did it before they knew about it, I would presume. Wasn't done secretively.
Have
He's seen our ordinances and rendered his opinion today. That's what you got.
Have we said anything to the county, getting their opinion?
I'd have no reason to.
Okay.
I doubt if they would render it. Do you understand what I mean? In other words,
Right.
in other words, I don't think their legal department's not going to say if you do something over there, you know what I mean? You'll be fine with us. They're never going to give us that opinion. Would be my guess.
I don't know. So the way we'd find out is basically we don't contribute, and then they don't contribute, and then we're in a roadblock, essentially, or then we contribute, and then they contribute, and it breaks it free that way.
Correct. We can't contribute because we don't have the money.
Well, yeah, I know.
So the short answer to the ultimate conclusion is they wouldn't give us the money. In my opinion, and Mr. Shepherd's opinion, but he's asking the practical question.
Yeah, I'm just seeing the next step, because, all right, they don't contribute, fine, let's go to court, boys and girls, and then see where it goes from there.
Mr. Sussman, we have $1 million there in CRA monies already, so if they took it back, we could still do what we're doing this year.
Oh, that is correct.
Well, they couldn't take the money out of the CRA that's already there. They just could not contribute any further, correct?
Well, let's say they don't usually send it for a couple of months. So you don't get the money till like December. So they could say, no, we heard what you did, and we're not mailing you the money.
Yeah,
Or they can mail it to us and ask for it
But
back.
they're not going to take money back
They
that they've
can't
already
take
sent.
money back
Right.
that they've already given.
They could ask for it. They could ask for it
They
back.
could ask for it, yeah.
They could ask for it back.
They could ask, but their standard practice has been that they make that one contribution, and that was a question that the firm asked, was do they send it to you like, in 12 equal installments, or do they send it to you one payment or two payments, and the payments come in December. As you know, the budget takes effect October 1, and then their payment has come in, and as Jim indicated, the agreement back in 2008, you've been receiving their full contribution every year since.
But there's been nothing changing that agreement from 2008, so that still should be in effect anyways. Is that correct?
It should, well, I think Mr. Shepherd would prefer that we do it this way because we didn't do it. It may be in effect. Well, I read it. It doesn't say forever and ever. It just says that year. It's really kind of open whether it's forever and ever. And since it is open, we didn't do it the next year. Do you understand my point?
But there's nothing contradicting. There's no ordinances or there's nothing we've done since 2008 that's conflicting to that in writing.
Yes, we didn't follow it.
Well, by practice, but
By
not,
practice, yeah.
Right, correct. Okay.
That's why I'd prefer to have the new interlocal, which is the exact same thing as we did in 2008 pass.
Okay. So
Not that it makes any difference either way. I'm still going to recommend you do it. In other words,
So the recommendation, though, is that we may want to put it in writing that that's what the agreement was, and that's what we're doing.
I know it's right in front of you, and it's the agenda item.
No, I understand that, but when we do this, that means we're still going to have to. Do we have to have a second reading and all that, or is it just?
It's an interlocal agreement, just one reading.
So it's just one reading.
It's not a reading; it's an agreement.
So just one agreement. Okay.
It's between you and yourselves, really. You're just going to have another meeting after this to do it, if you want to do it.
Okay. That's what I was getting at. There's still
I
another
understood.
meeting. Okay.
If you want to see the other one, pretty much reads just what I've written, just with different dates on it.
Okay.
Slightly changed historically and things like that.
All right, motion to approve the interlocal agreement between the city of Port Richey and Port Richey Community Redevelopment Agency.
Second.
Before we vote on this, I did see that there's someone signed up. I want to invite Dave Mueller, who signed up, and I'm going to allow you to speak on the last item as well as this item, and give you 3 minutes on both items, if that's okay. Yep, come on up. And then I'll get you next.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. With regard to the fire truck, I would like to see a standard format so you guys don't have to rack your brains as to what's going on with an acquisition of a truck from A, B, or C, or D vendor. My professional opinion is that a side-by-side comparison with a business case that establishes the needs, not necessarily the wants, of that department. I think it would make your job a lot easier if you see the thing laid out in a concise format that would point to the right decision. And I think what we do is spend a lot of time in here beating ourselves up, trying to figure out what it is we're buying from who and why and where, when it could be real simple if you can condense it to a format. It's just a suggestion. When I was in business, we call it the completed staff work. And that means you don't send half-baked things into the executive team to address and make a decision on. I think there's probably a need. It wasn't formatted in a way that you guys could see that. I never heard any reason why we needed trucks. It's just something from an observation. I think it would behoove all of us if we could settle on a format, do a business case. Why do you need it? What's getting replaced? What are the costs associated with that? And who is it that you want to buy it from? Just a suggestion. I think it's time for us to move to the next level of management. And I see this city floundering on these stupid little decisions like this that should be pretty cut and dry. I think I'll move on to the second one because that's a dead horse, in my opinion. With regard to the CRA, my thoughts there are there's risk potentially of not being funded from the county. The potential may or may not happen. We set a budget in motion reducing, as I recall, about $1 million worth of a contribution, I believe, from the CR that we were going to have to make out of general fund to CRA, but that was never considered in our budget reduction. That's still floating around out there, so more to come on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Scherer, welcome.
Hello, Sherry Scherer, 7802 Davis Street. On the CRA, I don't know 100%, I've only heard from other people, that the one reason that we paid that reduced rate one year was because the housing market fell. So we didn't collect as much money because house values plummeted, and the city was in risk of being bankrupt if we were to fund it fully. So, like I said, I don't know if it's 100%, that's just what I've heard, and I would hope that you would look into the reason why it was funded less than before. And when I read the Florida statute several times, because I don't understand it, if we don't fund it, and if the county doesn't fund it, and it's not earmarked for a specific purchase, if they back out and the CR agreement goes away, I think they can request all the money back from previous contributions. So if maybe somebody could look into that. Like I said, I'm not a scholar. I read it 3 or 4 times, and that's just what I was taking out of it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scherer. Any other hands? Seeing none. At this time, we have a motion, a second. We're going to put it to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. That closes out council business. We're going to go on to old business. And I'll start with old business. I already covered everything kind of in the beginning. So I've already covered my old business. I'm going to go to Vice Mayor. Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That concludes